Well, good morning and welcome to a special meeting of the Metropolitan King County Council, our annual Labor Summit. We're seeing how the mics are working there. Can folks hear that? When there's a little feedback. Up, higher. Very good. Okay, I'm getting some. Oh, we got a thumbs up. All right. My name is Rod Dembowski. I have the privilege this year of serving as chair of the Metropolitan King County Council, and we're joined today by our county executive, Dow Constantine. And we really appreciate the welcome that the Teamsters are making for us here. I want to take a moment to thank John Searcy and Rick Hicks. If you would give them a round of applause for hosting. I know they were in the room. And I think we'll start before we get into our agenda and program with just introductions, starting down on the left, your right, with Councilmember Von Reichbauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Pete Von Reichbauer. I represent District 7, which is Federal Way, Auburn, Algona, Pacific, and parts of other parts of South King County.
I'm Joe McDermott, representing Council District 8, the better parts of Berrien, SeaTac, Tukwila, West Seattle into Capitol Hill, and am a former member of AFT Washington.
Morning, my name is Claudia Balducci. I represent King County District 6, which is the east side of King County, Mercer Island, Bellevue, Kirkland, Redmond, and the Points communities and parts of Woodinville and Bothell. And I have been with King County, though, for 20 years, and I spent many of those years working in labor relations, so I've gotten to meet many of you and work with you in that role as well. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Cathy Lambert. I represent District 3. I call it the helicopter district because it is half of the landmass of King County. There are many forests, but guess what? There's lots of people that live there too. Redmond, Woodinville, Falls City, North Bend, Carnation, Duval, Issaquah, Sammamish, part of the east part of Woodinville, and yes, Skykomish is in King County.
Good morning. I'm Jean Cole Wells, representing the 4th Council District. Very different from the other ones. My district is all within the city of Seattle, and it goes from Madison Avenue up to Shoreline, 145th, and from Elliott Bay, Puget Sound, to I-5, except for a small part carved out in Council Member Gossett's district. I also was a longtime member of AFT Washington as well as WEA, and I'm really pleased to be with you here today. I'm sick a little bit, so don't get too close. Don't kiss him. Yeah, I know.
Good morning. My name is Dave Up the Grove, and I represent District 5, which is the heart of suburban South King County.
And my name is Larry Gossett, and I represent District 2, which are the inner city communities of Seattle, Central Area, Rainier Valley, Rainier Beach, and I have a little bit of unincorporated King County, and that is Skyway. Then going north, I represent Mount Lake Community, University, Wallingford, Bryant, Laurelhurst, and Fremont, and I'm happy to be here with all of you on this morning.
Good morning. My name is Rod Dembowski. My district is District 1. It's about a third of it is in the city of Seattle, starting north of Councilmember Gossett's district, about 65th Street east of I-5 up through Northgate, Lake City area, and then all of the cities of Shoreline, Lake Forest Park, Kenmore, and then Bothell, Woodinville, and north part of Kirkland, so kind of north part of the lake.
My name is Nicole Grant. I'm the Executive Secretary-Treasurer of MLK Labor, and we represent over 150 different unions in King County.
I'm Dow Constantine, King County Executive, and I represent all the places they already said, and a bunch more.
I'm Lorelei Walker with Protect 17, and I'm also sitting here as the King County Coalition Co-Chair.
Dustin Frederick, a Public Safety Employees Union Business Manager and Co-Chair of the Coalition also.
Good morning, I'm Meghan Peterson. I'm the Director for the King County Office of Labor Relations.
Whitney Abrams, Chief People Officer of King County, and I actually was a member and a staffer at Protect 17 for about 17 years.
Good morning, I'm Casey Sixkiller. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of King County, which means that I oversee all of our departments. And I am also the product of a 16-year member of the Teamsters.
Hello, my name is Michael Gonzalez. I am from Teamsters Local 174, and I am also the King County of Coalition's co-chair for the negotiation committee.
Hi, I'm Denise Cobden with Protect 17, and I'm also the other co-chair for coalition bargaining, and I'm also the co-chair for the Joint Labor Management Insurance Committee.
Good morning, I'm Jeremy Ferguson. I'm the maintenance manager for King County Road Services, but I'm here today wearing my union hat as a Protect 17 member.
We get everyone? I imagine this is what the table looks like for the master labor agreement bargaining. We might break up into small table bargaining later on in the meeting. We want to start today's meeting with a special recognition. We have about 15,000 employees at King County, most of whom are members of a union. And I think of them as everyday heroes. They keep our waters clean. They deliver public health services. They staff our jails. They protect communities in uniform. They drive our metro buses. And when you're out serving the community, sometimes things out of the ordinary course appear. In March of this year, one of our coach operators, Mr. Eric Stark, who's here, was driving his route, Route 75. He left Northgate and was continuing on through Sandpoint when suddenly and out of the blue, he was confronted in the middle of the street by a gunman who was shooting. And the gunman took aim at Eric right through his coach's windshield, shot and wounded him. He had passengers on that coach, folks that rely on Metro Transit to get around the community every day. We have the certified #1 best large transit operation in the country, right, County Executive Constantine? Absolutely. And this is just one example why. This hero, Eric Stark, did what most Metro operators are told never to do, and that is put your coach in reverse and back it up and get his passengers to safety. He no doubt saved lives that day, acting in the heroic and brave way that he did. And we are just deeply appreciative of his incredible heroism that day and wanted to take a moment to thank him and recognize him. And also to thank and recognize, Eric's driven with us for 7 years, but his wife, Kim. His wife, Kim, has been with us driving Metro Transit for 14 years and comes from a long line of county employees, I think 20 and 30-year other operators in the transit division. And Kim has been kind of a silent hero. When Eric came home from the hospital, he needed care. He needed wound care, support, emotional support, and Kim was there too. So we want to take a moment. I'll turn this over to County Executive Constantine before we invite them up, and Rob Gannon and the ATU leadership for a presentation and photo. But we wanted to take a moment to thank you and appreciate both of you if you'd stand up.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. We will have a brief presentation, and I'm sorry I'm going to have to ask you to come forward in a moment and have photos taken. But again, I had a chance to visit Eric and Kim when Eric was in Harborview recuperating, and then later on when their entire family had gathered. They have a large family who kept vigil at the hospital as Eric went through his recovery, and he was in remarkably good spirits right from the get-go. It was kind of stunning to me, someone who'd been through such a traumatic event was able to be so level-headed and magnanimous and clear about what he did and his duty to his passengers. It is not necessary to have cinematic style heroism for us to be the best transit agency in North America. That was not one of the requirements. But it didn't hurt to have people who understand that their duty is to protect the public and to have someone who so clearly goes above and beyond what could reasonably be expected in order to accomplish that is it's truly a credit to our entire workforce. I mean, I've asked people to consider, think of yourself in Eric's place in the seat of that bus as you're confronted by gunmen and realize that you've been shot. Can you honestly say you would have reacted the way he did? Can you honestly say you're confident that you would have been able to have the presence of mind to turn your bus around and to get not just yourself but your passengers out of danger? We all would like to think we could, but I bet some of us have a sneaking suspicion we would just open the door and run. So I am very grateful that we have this caliber of employee at King County. It was very kind of Eric and Kim, not long after this happened, to come out to Carnation for my State of the County address, where we were able to recognize them in the presence of many of the leaders of King County cities and the Carnation community. And Mr. Chair, if you wouldn't mind, I think we could present the proclamation, and then if we could ask Eric and Kim and also some of their colleagues to come up and have a photo taken along with the council.
I think that'd be great. Why don't we just do it right up here? Does that work?
Yes. Here, why don't we tell them what it says?
Oh, okay.
Well, no, we're not going to read the whole thing.
No, let's not read the whole thing.
But, Mr. Chair, on behalf of the two of us, we recognize Eric and Kim Stark for their service to King County and for Eric's particularly bravery, heroism, and quick thinking on the afternoon of March 27th. And we wish them safe and uneventful careers at Metro Transit. Serving, you wrote this, didn't you? It's very clever. Serving King County's mobility needs with professionalism, dedication, and compassion.
All right, very good. Come on up.
Could you come up? And there are representatives of the union as well as Metro Transit.
Oh, they're coming.
And Rob Gannon, where's Rob?
Rob is.
Oh, there he is, okay. And colleagues, would you like to come up?
Now, I know everybody's ATU, but Eric told me he actually used to be a Teamster, so it's okay.
But I'm taking
There we go, perfect.
Help me hold that.
Yeah, let's switch.
Good?
Are we good?
All right, Elizabeth's the number one camera.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Mr. Goodman, I'm just in your hand in the photo. No, I'm following it. Okay, 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. And one more. It's over.
All right.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Anything in your defense? You have to use the microphone.
I just wanted to say thank you to the county council and the executive and for Rod, the chair, whom Kim and I met in the elevator at King County Courthouse. My brother-in-law, Bruce Anderson, is a marshal, and he was giving us a tour, and we happened to meet Rod there. I'm humbled to receive this, and really I want to receive it on behalf of King County Metro Transit. They have been wonderful and very supportive during my recovery, supporting Kim and I and our family. And I wanted to receive it too on behalf of my fellow transit operators. And I've said this before, but I truly believe this, that just about any other transit operator in the same situation would have performed in a similar fashion. I work with professionals, and I'm honored to do so. So thank you.
All right, well, we can adjourn the meeting now.
Yes. Thank you all for being here.
All right, I have just a few introductory remarks. We'll get going, and then the county executive does as well. And I was talking to our Human Resource Director, Jay Osborne, and Jay reminded me that about a third of our workforce at the county, and we have 15,000 employees or so, will turn over in the next 5 years. About 2,000, I think you said, Jay, are eligible to retire today. And that means a new and younger workforce. And I think one of the things that King County is particularly good about is being responsive to the needs of our workforce. And I just wanted to talk a little bit today about one particular need that is a growing and pressing challenge, and that's childcare and what King County is doing about it. About 3 years ago, we adopted probably the most progressive paid parental leave program in the country, which was 12 weeks of 100% pay for new parents, either birth parents, adoptive parents, or foster parents, and not just mom, but dad. And the program has now had about 1,000 people in 3 years use it with pretty darn good success. And we think that it helps spur the statewide 12 weeks of leave. I want to give special recognition to Dustin Frederick, who's at the table today. When we were trying to put it together, you know, like any new labor policy, there were some rough patches and some divots, and Dustin was creative and thoughtful and really helped us clear some of those hurdles and bring it to life. And in talking to our HR folks, they believe it's helped with retention, folks coming back to work, particularly helped with gender equity and pay equity issues, because you don't fall out and fall behind if you've got that support, and has helped with recruitment. Jay tells me we're recruiting folks that are coming for our benefits package from Microsoft and Amazon, and we need those kind of workers to be able to deliver the services that we do. So we've had pretty good luck with that. Following up on that, we started a pilot program for Bring Your Baby to Work. What do you do at 12 weeks? You know, the kid's not really usually ready there for daycare, and daycare is expensive and hard to find. And in my office, I'm very excited. We were one of the early folks to pilot it. Elizabeth Evans, who you saw taking the pictures, there's Elizabeth, brought Gracie Webb to work every day after her 12 weeks of leave. She is our first graduate of the Infants at Work program at the King County Council. She got a little graduation photo.
Oh, that's cute.
And I have to tell you, I got to see this program every day at the office unfold, and selfishly, I got to keep Elizabeth on the staff, right? When you have a second kid, sometimes folks fall out of the workforce. We got to keep her. And the family there saved some money because you weren't having to place a child in daycare. And I will tell you, maybe the best benefit was the added value that Gracie brought to the 12th floor, our workplace. Just an incredible amount of joy and positivity, folks interacting with the child. And I think that this is a model that won't work for every employee. You can't, Eric, you're not going to have a baby sitting on your lap driving the coach. But where it works, I think it can be a helpful part of our solution to be responsive to a new workforce. The third kind of bullet point, if you will, on childcare is something that the County Council has been working on for about 1.5 years, and it's decision time now. And that is to figure out how to spend about $300 million that will be coming to the county over the next 20 years or so through something we call PASTA, P-S-T-A-A, the Puget Sound Taxpayer Accountability Account, if I've got that right. It was an amendment put on the ST3 authorizing legislation by Jessen Farrell, former state representative, that essentially rebates back to the county what would be our sales tax on that project. It's a lot of money, and we've been working now with the community groups and at the council for, like I said, about 1.5 years to figure out how to spend it, and it'll be put into 3 buckets. One of the buckets will be early childhood care, pre-K. The second will be K through 12 at-risk youth, and the third will be kind of workforce development, post-secondary education and workforce opportunity, training and support. And those are big picture buckets. We've got to figure out where to invest the dollars and what the priorities will be. There'll be a hearing in Councilmember McDermott's Committee of the Whole on July 1st, Monday at 1:30 p.m. To figure out how to allocate those dollars. But with respect to the early childhood work, we think, and I think there's growing consensus, to invest that money in building some pre-K early childhood learning centers throughout the county. I hope that work, and hopefully we'll hang a language on this to encourage that it's built by organized labor right? A high-quality project that is delivering living wages to the workers. And that'll be good. And I think there's an opportunity for labor to weigh in as well on that third bucket with respect to providing for supports for young people who want to get into the apprenticeship track or the trade. So I encourage you all to take a look at that, engage on it. I know Dale Bright is paying attention to it. But there's just a few things from a King County perspective that's going on now that I want to bring to your attention. We're excited to be here with you today. We appreciate your partnership and looking forward to today's agenda. With that, I'll ask County Executive Constantine to do his welcoming remarks. Is that all right?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll try to be brief so we can get the substance of the agenda. But I'm really honored to be back here at the Teamsters Hall. And thank you to the brothers and sisters of the Teamsters for allowing us to be in their hall. I'm appreciative of the opportunity to be here in Tukwila. I'm reminded, by the way, that the State of the County address was in Preston, not in Carnation. I've been in the parks facility in Preston. I've been on a tour of King County parks, hiking, biking, horseback riding our parks, kind of in preparation for the fall parks levy. And we've been seeing the remarkable assets that this county has set aside for its people over the course of generations. And that community center where we had the State of the County address where the Starks visited is something that all King County residents ought to get to see. The strong partnerships that we have built with labor are helping us to accomplish a lot of these things beyond the four corners of labor contract. And that's one of the most rewarding things about my time in office is the partnerships that we have built with the democratically elected leadership of our employees' labor unions to allow us to move forward on issues that directly impact contracts, but also on issues as disparate as better care for children in our community, to improving our parks and protecting our environment, to increasing transit mobility. We are a team in doing these things. And if I could convey one thing to you today, I would say that the value that we can get by taking care of business on our contracts and then focusing on the things we can do together to take on the challenges of society, those are the things that are going to bring the most value to all of us, your members, and all of our community over the long term. The strong partnerships with labor are vital in our efforts to make this King County government a better place to work, of course, and to make it a better place for the people we're working for, the public. These partnerships are delivering outcomes. In May, we negotiated our first ever master labor agreement with 62 bargaining units representing more than 5,000 employees, an enormous accomplishment. And then just 2 months ago, on April 10th, I was able to sign the total compensation agreement for those same employees. And an alert, tomorrow is Retro Day. Retro Day is not the day you break out your best duds from high school and wear them to work. Retro Day is the day the back pay to the start of this contract, January, kicks in. So there'll be additional funds in paychecks. And that is part of our commitment to be square with our employees. Our Joint Labor Management Insurance Committee is a model as well for how labor and management can work together as partners and deliver high-quality health benefits to employees and their families and really bend the trend on increasing healthcare costs. We've been able to deliver new benefits to employees, like the 12 weeks of paid parental leave and the ability to use 3 days of sick leave to volunteer in the community, and a first ever career development scholarship fund. And one of our big focuses is trying to figure out all the different ways we can offer employees career development opportunities, whether it's in education or mentoring or job shadowing or any other asset, any other value that we're able to bring to allow people to pursue their dreams, whether it is to continue to be the best at the job you're doing or to advance within that particular line of work, or to do something completely different, whether it be inside King County or with another employer. Our value as an employer, part of what we need to do to compete to bring good people to King County is to be a place where you can continue to grow. And we're working very hard to be that kind of an employer. These achievements speak volumes about our relationship, and it's something I think our employees value. It's exactly 1 year tomorrow that the United States Supreme Court delivered the Janus decision. Yeah. And yet, the vast majority of our union employees have chosen to keep doing their fair share, to pay their dues, to be a part of the team, to continue to help advance the goals inside labor and beyond that I talked about. Because they see the value in labor unions. They see the value that unions bring to both their members as collective voice on wages, benefits, and conditions, and to the entire community. They see a value in the partnerships I described. So I look forward to building on our partnerships and exploring how we can work together even more effectively for both our employees, your members, and the 2.25 million people who call this county home. Thank you for being here at the Labor Summit.
Thank you, Don. One of the privileges in this job that I've got to experience is the opportunity to work with our next speaker, an incredible and powerful ally and leader for all people who are working. And it is just amazing to watch her and learn from her. And when you get to work with her on something, it's really cool. Please give a warm welcome to our next speaker, the Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Martin Luther King County Labor Council, or MLK Labor, as you call yourselves now, Nicole Grant.
Thank you, Rod. And thanks to all of the brothers and sisters and friends, workers, union leaders that are here in the room today. It is my dream job to serve labor every day, and it's an honor to do this work with you. And to be here today at the Teamsters Hall in Tukwila. Thank you. This is an incredible asset to our community. There are so many important gatherings here. I wanted to say a few words about the workers at King County, because between transportation and public safety and public health and utilities and the hundreds of different jobs that all the workers and union members at King County perform so well, so seamlessly, you really make King County a great place to live. You're so important. And because of the seamlessness of the work that you perform, I think that there's an unsung hero situation. I don't think people always understand the true value of having a really perfect infrastructure and all of the economy that rests on top of that, and all of the lives for our children and our elders that rests on top of that. It's very important. And in my opinion, the best way to honor this labor, like the special sauce of respect for your work, is collective bargaining and representation. And I thank all the unions here for doing that. And I thank the county. The county always negotiates in good faith. I encounter a lot of employers in my role, and the county is the standard to which I wish many of them would aspire. The council, you guys always ratify the contracts. That's significant. It's a big deal to have workers and employers come together and figure out what's best for everyone, and your support's crucial. When it comes to representation, I'm going to use this chance to segue into a couple of words about what the Labor Council is up to, because we just finished our strategic plan. You know, I got to have a lot of cool union jobs before this one, and one of them was working at King County. In the Parks Department, my union was SEIU 925, and I was in charge of weed whacking the trails, and if nobody more competent was available, mowing ballparks at Marymore. And I could do that job because I always felt safe, like somebody had my back. And I remember coming to work one day, and there were all these guys in green jumpsuits doing my job. And they were on a work crew, and I was mortified because I had been sent there to do that job. And I called my union, you know? And they showed up, and they handled it, and I felt respected, and I felt like I had a really good outcome. The Labor Council has noticed that to represent union members today requires an extra level of attention to equity. And a big part of our strategic plan is to work with all of the unions and all of the workers and members to identify the issues that are important to them and represent them. When the Me Too movement exploded onto the national airwaves, it was like a crash course in the fact that women in all industries have been particularly demeaned in the workforce. The Black Lives Matter movement is a rapid expose into the chronic fear and degradation that Black citizens and Black workers in the United States are forced to deal with. And so making it a priority that we hear from workers what their issues are, and we learn how to represent them on their most personal problems that are workplace issues is very important. And then I just want to close by saying that there's a lot of enthusiasm in labor for union organizing right now. And this is a time for this movement to grow when the rich would like to see us contract. This is, in fact, our time to grow. We have public support. We have the support of King County. And we have union leaders that are just willing to work and grind so that people can have the dignity of a union. And I look forward to everybody being together in that fight to expand this movement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicole. We've got two additional speakers here before we turn to a couple action items. And the first is Dustin Frederick to give an overview of the history of the Labor Summit, and then Lorelei Walker with Protect 17, who will speak on collaborations and partnerships. I got that right? All right, Dustin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I was thinking about how to talk about the history of the summit, and so it prompted me to Google Kent Pullen. And you should do that. He was a unique, awesome individual. And he was a PhD engineer. I don't know how many other council members qualify in that category. There might be some, I don't know, but not normal. That's not the normal background for someone that's going to seek public office. But he was not a normal guy in the good sense. He was an awesome individual to work with. And just a quick history on him, he was in public office for over 30 years. He was elected to the House of Representatives, State House in 1972. 1974, he went to the Senate, and he was reelected in 78, 82, and 86. And then in 1989, he was elected to the King County Council and representing the 9th Council District. And then he was reelected to the council in 93, 97, and 2001. And one of the most interesting things about Kent is that he was a very conservative financial conservative with regard to the budget and concerns about citizens' taxes, and kind of a libertarian at heart, according to some people. But one of the things that was mentioned, he unfortunately passed away much too young in 2003. And in the obituary that was in the Seattle PI, they said that he brought a conservative outlook to the council, except in one area. And that was, he was stridently pro-union. one of the few issues that set him apart from other conservatives of that time. And I would just like to add, in my experience over the years, that an addendum to that, and that is that I think the council historically has been pro-union and pro-worker. And that's why we have the King County that we have today. And I think that his legacy through this labor summit is that we'll have an ongoing pro-union, pro-worker council and executive, and it creates an atmosphere that has resulted in the outstanding services that have been referenced earlier today and in the kind of employees that we've honored today. This labor summit, I think, is a testimony to that historic relationship, and I'm hopeful that it continues on into the future. And that is it.
All right, thank you, Dustin. And we're going to hear again from you on our labor policy briefing as well.
Briefly,
right?
yes.
All right, Lorelei.
Hello, everyone. Sorry about my voice, but my daughter and I, she's 5, we practiced our chants for the Pride Parade coming up this weekend. So it's a little hoarse, but it was definitely worth it. So thank you, Chair Dembowski, King County Council members, Executive Constantine, Executive Labor Leader Grant, and all of the supporting staff, members who brought this event to fruition. Coalition Co-Chair Frederick, my dear colleague Dustin, brings us the story of collaboration between leaders committed to partnership across policy, across government, and labor. So I look around this hall, and what I can envision is the decades of represented employees who have filled these seats to bargain their health care, to bargain their safety, their wages that they need to support the children at their feet. Their decades of participation in ratification votes, their passion, their sacrifice to enact strikes, and their deliberation on support for elected leaders happened right here. Workers voiced their concern on policies causing workplace or community harm and policies that supported workplace and community health. Human protections such as OSHA and living wages, the workday itself that we all enjoy, equal pay for equal work, and more were fought for through the mechanism of unionized collective voice and power. So the working members who fill your seats and those in union halls around the country span the century. If you go up to the 3rd floor in Teamsters 174, they literally have a century and a decade of union buttons displayed that stand as proof of workers' perpetual commitment to solidarity. It's a visual demonstration of collective power and strength focused on the common good. So you can see the impacts of labor everywhere you look. The firefighter who saves your kid, the nurse who redresses their bandages, the food pipeline that delivers, stocks, and staffs the markets you patron. These are the teachers that educate and cultivate our children. Labor is the foundation of transit. Unions design, light, and construct our buildings. Workers maintain our roads. Labor ensures our safety and provides services to support our relaxation during vacation when we need to recharge. Our members ensure that every child treated in the clinic and in early learning settings has the best chance to thrive regardless of the stigma society has leveraged against them. Labor is everywhere. So as a coalition, I'm intrigued by the power, the potential power built from a strong partnership with our elected policymakers, the government, to transform labor's voice into action. Government is King County's framework, and it is fueled by labor. Yet it is council who is tasked with a very heavy burden of defining and deciding what to resource. You transform our community values into impactful outcomes. Your budget is by definition a moral document. So policy and funding decisions can instantly make or break a person, a family, a community, or an entire nation. So the space today we held for conversation and collaboration to partner on the challenges we can tackle now for the common good is greatly appreciated. Today we bring 3 challenges to the table. The county's decade or plus older labor policy is ripe for revision. I think it even references fax machines. So it's time. And now that we're in a new world of dynamic grand bargaining, where the master labor agreement and total compensation, wages, working conditions, healthcare across all of those unions and contracts will be bargained all at one time. So there's a collective interest to streamline the ratification process and the transmittal process for negotiated contracts. As we reflect on the inception and iterations of grand bargaining, we wish to collaborate and expedite this process to ensure wage increases and contractual protections meet timelines and ensure that at least there is equality between the represented people that have fought for these protections and the non-represented employees that are a part of one King County. And lastly, we bring to you our focused concern on the state of unincorporated King County roads funding, both now and into the future. We ask for your commitment to continue partnership with the Department of Local Services to produce and execute a multi-pronged concrete solution at the local and state level to mitigate the strikingly deep deficits in road funding. There is an urgency to addressing our collective concerns. So thank you. I am deeply, deeply grateful for our conversation today.
All right, thank you, Laura. All right, terrific. Let's turn then, if we can, to, do we have Pat Hammaker here? Pat? You're behind me. All right. Lorelei touched on a couple of items there that we're going to turn to now. And I don't know that we've done this before at past labor summits, but a couple of items we figured needed attention, and we thought what better place to do it than here. One is under the charter, I think Pat will tell us, that the county council establishes labor policies and the executive bargains those policies to contract, and then the council adopts the contract. And those labor policies have not been updated in a systematic way for some time. Laura, you mentioned they literally say fax, they reference fax machines.
I believe so.
Okay, I'm going to take your word for it. So we wanted to commence a process cooperative with the executive and with our labor partners to take a look at them and see what needs to be updated to reflect current conditions and goals and objectives. Pat, we have a motion that would commence that process, and you're going to give us an overview of it.
Sure, Mr. Chair, thank you. Patrick Hammaker, council staff. Actually, in prior roles, I've been a member of Afl-Cio, the International Association of Firefighters, and also Teamsters Local 117. So the motion that creates...
Independent, unbiased, central staff analyst.
Yes, sir. The motion that creates the Labor Policy Work Group is proposed motion 2019-0265. And it would form a work group that is responsible for looking at the labor policies of King County and recommending any changes to the policies by March 30th of 2020. The county council, as you noted, Mr. Chair, has a responsibility for setting those labor policies. The executive branch bargains those policies. The executive is the signer of all of the contracts. And the executive branch also has the responsibility for maintaining and operating the personnel system and the labor relations for the county as well. So the responsibilities of that work group would be to recommend to do a full review of those policies. They cover a number of topics. There are 7 major chapters of the policies. Copies of the policies are included in your packets for the council members. And once again, they're to report back by March 30th of 2020. The makeup of the work group is as follows. No more than 3 council members, the executive or the executive's designee, the chief people officer, if that person is not the executive's designee, the Director of Labor Relations, and at least 4, but not more than 6 labor representatives, such that the work group itself is equally balanced between management and labor. That report would be finished and sent to the County Council for consideration and action, and then the labor policies themselves could be amended in due course by the Council sitting as the Labor Policy Committee. So that concludes my report on that item, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Patrick. We will now have comments on this from Meghan Peterson, our Director in the Office of Labor Relations, and then again from Dustin Frederick.
Thank you, Council Chair. Just a few comments. I'd like to start by acknowledging the partnership that currently exists between the executive and legislative branches as it relates to labor relations in King County. We can always improve, and that's the subject of today's agenda insofar as we are looking at the labor policies. We are also looking at our legislative transmittal process for labor agreements. But I do want to take a moment and just acknowledge that when it comes to bargaining and approving labor contracts so that they become a reality for workers, we do a pretty darn good job. So as Nicole Grant acknowledged, not every jurisdiction enjoys such a harmonious relationship between their elected branches, and I just want to note that today. And the reason why I think we do enjoy such a successful partnership is because we share a strong interest in supporting our unions. That's a very strong interest that both the executive and council share. Why? Because our unions help make King County a model employer. They ensure that we provide fair wages and an employee experience that compares favorably to every other employer in the jurisdiction. So in terms of labor policies, I agree it's been a little while since we've dusted them off and reviewed them, so it's appropriate, as Lorelei noted. I think this is a timely moment to look at them as the total compensation methodology evolves, as we embark on our successor master labor agreement negotiations. And I just state that the way our office, my office in labor relations, uses the policies is broad parameters that inform bargaining. So it's not prescriptive, but rather rooted in principles of sound government. So sustainability, equity, values, and looking at how we compare to other employers in the Puget Sound. So with that, I just want to thank Council and Labor for bringing this to the forefront, and I look forward to the work ahead.
Thank you very much, Meghan. All right, Dustin.
Thank you. Well, I don't know whether I'm stumping for resident historian here or what, but I want to talk about the history of the council a little bit because I've been around since it started almost. 1968, the Home Rule Charter created a 9-member council, and John Spellman was the first county executive, and it was a partisan council. It had R's and D's and an independent category of independent, if you could qualify to get elected under that. In 1992, it was expanded to 13 members in conjunction with the Metro merger, and then in 2004, there was a charter amendment, and the council was contracted from 13 to 9. And in 2008, there was a charter amendment that changed the council to nonpartisan. And the reason I bring this up in some brief comments here about the labor policies is that there's change. There's change all the time. There's new people coming and going, but the policies remain. And we're fortunate in King County. I want to echo what Meghan said about it is a great place to bargain collective bargaining agreements. And I think that's been noted not only in Washington State, but I think in other areas of the United States, that they've had people come and ask why we have a decent and good relationship with labor, King County and labor. And so I want to say in closing that the labor policies provide the consistency in values through all these changes in leadership that have occurred and will continue to occur, and the opportunity to partner with the executive and council in the ongoing development of the policies is a privilege for labor, and it's appreciated and valued very highly. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dustin. This item was introduced and has been referred to the Committee of the Whole. It is motion number 2019-0265. Councilmember McDermott chairs the Committee of the Whole, and we would need to relieve the committee to be able to take action today if the council desires to do so. Councilmember McDermott.
I move we relieve the Committee of the Whole of the legislation so we can take action on it today.
All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Melanie, would you please read motion 2019-0265 into the record?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 4 is proposed motion number 2019-0265, creating a work group to review and recommend changes to King County's labor policies.
Thank you. Councilmember Gossett, would you like to put the motion before the council for consideration?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to do so. It's been about 11 years since we updated our labor policies. I think it's a great opportunity to come up with some really effective and creative new policies, given the makeup of the committee that was earlier described to us. And I think it's absolutely excellent that we're including representatives from labor, from the King County Council, and from the executive's office, because that gives us the foundation to come up with some excellent improvements to what is already the most progressive relationship between organized labor and big urban/rural governments in our country. Therefore, I move that we pass motion 2019-0265.
All right, thank you very much, Councilmember Goss. The motion is before us. Do other members wish to speak on the motion? Councilmember Balducci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say a few words because I was really mindful of what Nicole was talking about earlier about the respect we show and the dignity we acknowledge when we engage in good faith collective bargaining. I'm sending off electric sparks apparently, but I don't think it's my mic.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah.
it was the phone on the control panel.
Thank you. Anyway, it starts with that process succeeds when we start with an open and honest sharing of our interests. And in many cases, our values coincide absolutely. We talked a little bit about how we treat families in the workplace and good pay and benefits. Our interests overlap entirely, but sometimes our interests are different. And we need to share what those interests are. We need to hear from our workers what their interests are. They need to hear from management what our interests are, because ultimately we all serve the same community and the members of the community. And without them, we're not here. We don't have a job to do. So I think that it's really important that we have clear and thoughtful labor policies. This is the council's charter opportunity to say what our general ideas about how we should engage with our labor unions and our employees are. And that's how we vote on all those contracts. That's how, when they come to us, we get to vote without any changes because we know that they meet the policies that we set out, because our input is general. So I think this is really important work. I'm very glad that we're doing it collaboratively, not just having the council set out policies, but having a discussion with the county executive who's responsible for implementing them, and with our labor partners to make sure that they reflect our values together. But I think this is a very healthy move, but I also don't want to underestimate how difficult it can be. So we're going to be asking our labor partners to be working with us and really thinking hard about how we do this next round of labor policies. I'm very pleased that we're moving forward with it. I look forward to the work. We're going to roll up our sleeves, and I think we're going to be happy with the results. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Balducci. Councilmember Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I think this is a great 2.0. Unfortunately, we haven't done 1.0. And that's the problem for me. I feel very sad that we've actually admitted that we haven't updated our labor policies in 11 years. That's an insult to everybody in this room. Labor policies should be it is a standing committee of this county. I don't even remember the last time we met. It was a couple of years ago, maybe one more recently. But it should be a regular thing. We should be hearing how things are going on a regular basis so that we can be advising our negotiators. So I think that we should be doing what the charter says. And what the charter says is that the role is in the legislative body to come up with the policies, and then we can work with labor and the executive to make that happen. We're in the middle of a charter review right now, and they are trying to come up with a number of things that they want to do. So we're going to have the charter review and this happening at the same time, which may go in the same direction or may go in different directions. 80% of the general fund is salaries, and so it is an important aspect of trying to balance, as Councilmember Belgici said, trying to balance what is best for the entire county and making sure that we have happy and safe employment. So I think that this is premature. I've asked for a legal opinion on are we following through on what our responsibilities are or not. I had asked for a normally accepted courtesy hold for a week, but I've been told that will not happen. So the part in here also that concerns me is that only 3 people of the council will be on this committee. And as far as I know from reading my responsibilities, 9 of us have that responsibility. I realize the comeback will be, well, then you'll have a quorum. But we could meet in 1.0 and get the basics set so we have the foundation. 2.0 could be the task force after we hear what the Charter Review Commission's doing so that we can all work together. So I think it's a good idea, but I think it's out of step. So I look forward to working with you, but I also think that we need to be doing this more often. And I hope in 11 years we're not back here saying, oh, it's time for another meeting on this. It should be done regularly. You're important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lambert. Other members have questions or comments. Councilmember Colwells.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I apologize, I'm a little sick, so I may sound funny, but I'm very supportive of this motion. I think what's really important is that we all recognize the changing, evolving circumstances that all working people and their families are in. I would never have thought possible some of, just 5 years ago, some of the changes that we've had taking place. And we know that we have more challenges. We've had, as Nicole brought out, the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, and much more need for childcare that's affordable. Our housing prices are out of sight. It's more and more difficult for the average family to get by. And I think this is a very positive step forward to take so that we can recognize the need for inclusiveness, diversity in our workforce, and to keep up with these changing demands. So I'm looking very forward to seeing the outcomes of this joint process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Up the Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I was really little, my brother and I would get 50 cents a week from my parents for doing our chores. It was our allowance. And when my father's company went on strike, we still had to do our chores, but we didn't get our 50 cents a week. And I didn't like that as a kid, but when I got older, I realized that 50 cents really didn't make any difference in my parents' budget, but that my parents were trying to teach us a lesson that we're all in this together. And I think that's the spirit reflected in this proposal, is to engage with our labor partners in the development of those policies. I think it is a good idea to do a comprehensive overhaul. The Labor Policy Committee met as recently as a couple weeks ago to look at some specific items, but this overarching look, I think, is long overdue. And I do appreciate the fact that all 9 of us will be responsible in the council for voting on it, that this is a group that will help develop these recommendations and bring it to us so that all of us will get to deliberate on the final recommendations. But I appreciate the labor partners willing to engage in this process and hope we can move forward.
Super, very good. Any other members? And I'm sorry, it's a long table, so if I'm missing you, raise your hand high. Okay. Just to conclude the debate on it, as the sponsor of the motion, I want to echo the the comments of some of my council colleagues, but do want to note that the labor policies that are here in our packet were dated June of 2017. So I think what Mr. Hamaker was referring to was a comprehensive update, had been 11 years ago, but we have over the time done specific updates. And I do think that a collaborative approach, working with labor and management together to do a comprehensive assessment of where we stand and where we should be, is the better way. Ultimately, 9 members of the council will have to vote on adopting any changes, and that's just the prescription that we have in our charter. So, Mr. Executive, we don't often get to ask you this, but if we pass this motion, are you going to sign it?
I mean, if it's a motion, you guys can just do it. But of course, I will sign and support it. I just can't believe that in the decade since I left the council, you guys haven't managed to do this. So congratulations. Way to go.
Some of us are new. Some of us are new. Zing. All right. With that unusual addition to the debate from the county executive, I think we'll ask the clerk to call the roll on proposed motion 2019-0265.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Balducci. Aye. Councilmember Dunn. Councilmember Gossett.
Aye.
Councilmember Colwells. Aye. Councilmember Lambert.
No.
Councilmember McDermott.
Aye.
Councilmember Up the Grove.
Aye.
Councilmember Von Reitbauer. Aye. Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the vote is 7 ayes. Councilmember Lambert voting no, and Councilmember Dunn excused.
All right, with that action, we have adopted proposed motion 2019-0265. I will sign it at the conclusion of the meeting and transmit it to the executive for his signature as well. Thank you, Dow. Boom. All right, we'll turn now to our second action item today, and that is proposed motion number 2019-0266. We heard from one of the folks talking before, and I think the county executive mentioned that Retro Day is coming, and that's not a throwback to the past, but it's obviously a pay catch-up, and it takes some time between a tentative agreement that's reached at the table and approval of the contract at the council, and it sometimes takes too much time. I can see a number of people in here, including the operating engineers and others and ATU have come and said, hey, can you guys adopt this quickly? And so we want to take a look at what this motion does at the process, and the county's been very good at this in recent years, using our lean techniques to look at processes and see how we can take out unnecessary steps and reduce the time to decision-making. And in this case, it's important because oftentimes these contracts include benefits. So this motion, if adopted today, would establish a working group on a relatively short time frame to assess our contract approval processes from the time of tenant agreement to council adoption, see how we can speed it up. Council staff, Pat Hamaker, is going to give us an overview and tell me what I've gotten wrong.
I think you gave an excellent staff report, Mr. Chair.
All right.
You've covered all the highlights. Yep, thank you.
That's it?
Unless you want me to go over the membership of the committee, which is
I think
that
that'd be helpful.
would be 5 members. It would be the council's chief of staff, the executive's designee, the chief people officer, and 2 representatives of county labor unions. They would look at, as you noted, just the process from tentative agreement through council adoption, and that report would be due back to the council by the end of September 2019. So that would conclude my remarks. You hit the highlights.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Hamaker? All right. Let's see. We've got a couple of additional comments on this from Denise Cobden, who's got a lot of experience on it. Denise, are you? I can't see you. There you are. All right. And then Michael Gonzalez. Go ahead, Denise.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. And before I talk briefly about that, I just want to acknowledge the amazing accomplishment of having a grand bargain, which includes a master labor agreement and total compensation bargaining. I've been the lead negotiator on this for the coalition for the past 3 contracts. And as many of you in this room can concur, there were many points where we didn't know if this was actually going to happen. And there were many voices who questioned the success of this. And I think that this has been a really successful process. I think that it's created some efficiencies for the county, and I think it's become a great benefit for our workers that we represent. So before I get into ways that we can improve, I wanted to commend everyone involved, and I also wanted to express my gracious humility at leading and being involved in this project. It's definitely been a highlight of my career. So with that, we're all looking for improvement, process improvement, and just to give you a little bit of a background, we have generally gotten a tentative agreement by, I would say, September or October of the previous year. And then it takes a little bit of time for our groups to do the small table reconciliation and to ratify. But we're generally done by about the end of the year. Yet there's about a 6-month gap for retro or for the implementation of a contract, which can lead to some complications with our membership on certain provisions of the contract and on pay. So it's something that we are internally looking at with the county and with the exec's office to see where we can be more efficient as labor negotiators and as the coalition, but we also think that there's some opportunities for us to partner on each level and to see how we could pass this through more quickly so our members don't have to wait 6 months to enjoy a contract provision or to enjoy their wage increase effective January 1st.
All right, Denise, thank you. And I want to recognize you for your hard work on that master labor agreement. Round of applause for Denise Cobden. Okay, and Michael.
Yeah, I would just echo what Denise said. Embarking on this master labor agreement was a bit daunting. We talked about over 62 bargaining units, over 5,000 members, I believe over 20 different unions as some came into the coalition at the beginning and then some halfway through. I think there are a lot of lessons that we learned going through the MLA negotiations, also the total comp. There's also two people I would also like to talk about, which is Meghan Peterson, the head of Office of Labor Relations. Obviously, without her, we might still be bargaining this contract. We always talk about our side. We think it's tough to get all our people on the same page. Well, Meghan's tasked with getting all the departments and the managers and everybody else on the same page on her side, which I don't think we give credit to enough about how difficult that can be. And then the second thing I think would just be, taking what we've learned, what worked and what didn't, and making sure that by this motion we sit down and use the best practices to make sure that this becomes more efficient, because it can be, and I fully support the motion.
All right, thank you very much, Michael. Appreciate that. Meghan, do you want to add anything on this from your perspective?
I think you guys have captured it. There's definitely opportunities for improvement. I think in every swim lane, in terms of our bargaining, we're getting more efficient. We're actually going to meet earlier than we ever have this year to do some prep together to analyze ways that we can streamline the process. My office, in conjunction with the executive office, is looking at ways to streamline. And then, I think there's probably opportunities in your swim lane, Mr. Chair.
Yes, agree. And that's why we'll have everyone participate at the table to see where we can bring it to a conclusion more expeditiously, while still doing our respective roles, right? When they come over to the council, it's oftentimes the first time we're seeing the contract, and obviously we have central staff analysts that look and make sure that the terms are consistent with our labor policies, and then getting it scheduled for hearing and adoption takes some time. And there may be ways that we can do that through establishing new processes to expedite that review or complete that review concurrently while it's still pre-transmittal. There are some things that I think that this committee will be able to take a look at to help us get this work done more efficiently. All right, this proposed motion, which I'm proud to have sponsored, was introduced and referred to the Committee of the Whole. It's number 2019-0266. To take action today, we would need a motion to relieve the committee. That is chaired, again, of course, by Councilmember McDermott.
So moved.
Okay, Councilmember McDermott has moved to relieve the Committee of the Whole from jurisdiction over this item. Take action today. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Councilmember Cole-Wells, would you like to make the motion to?
Mr. Chair, can I read it into the record first?
You absolutely can. I was doing so good, Melanie.
Thank you. Item 5 is proposed motion number 2019-0266, creating a labor process work group to identify ways to increase the approval process between tentative agreement and council approval of labor contracts.
All right, that's been read into the record. Councilmember Cole-Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move proposed motion number 2019-0266.
All right, does any member wish to provide comments on it? Councilmember Balducci.
The thing I loved the most about working in labor relations was getting out and getting to see what all the different units did. I got to learn about jails and animal control and all kinds of things I knew very little about before I came to work for King County. The thing I hated the most about my job was the contract ratification and implementation checklist. It was complicated and long, and you had to go visit with all kinds of bureaucratic offices to make sure they were doing what they needed to be doing. It's hard. So, and there's reasons for that, but we can definitely simplify it, and I think that would make everybody's lives better. So I'm very, very happy to support this motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, watch out, you may be signing up for an appointment here. We appreciate Councilmember Balducci's expertise that she brings to the council, given her experience on these issues. It's been very helpful. Other members with questions or comments? All right, seeing none, clerk will call the roll on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Balducci? Aye. Councilmember Dunn?
Aye.
Councilmember Gossett?
Aye.
Councilmember Cole-Wells?
Aye.
Councilmember Lambert?
Aye.
Councilmember McDermott?
Aye.
Councilmember Afl-Cio?
Aye.
Councilmember Von Reitbauer? Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the vote is 9 ayes, 0 noes.
All right, we've adopted proposed motion 2019-0266. I'll sign it, and the county executive hopefully will sign it as well. I'd ask that the roll call on that item be the roll call for attendance at today's council meeting as well, Madam Clerk. Turning now to our last item, but a very important one today. It was mentioned earlier about the challenges with respect to funding, in particular our roads division. A lot of 250, 300,000 folks live in unincorporated King County, and there we are the local government for them, in addition to being the regional government for all 2.25 million people in the county. As a local government, we have responsibility for infrastructure, investments, maintenance, and as a result of the 1% cap that was adopted a number of years ago, we have really struggled with our roads and general fund investments. And I don't think it's been felt any harder than in the roads division, where we have just not kept up. Councilmember Lambert knows these numbers by heart with respect to the deficit. It's hundreds of millions of dollars a year that should be going into this system that isn't. And frankly, it's reaching a critical breaking point. I'm seeing our Director of Department of Local Services, John Taylor, nodding in agreement. Appreciate you being here, John. So we wanted to have a discussion today about what we can do with respect to this issue. We think we need some help down in Olympia. We've worked on it for a number of years, but we need to, I think, make some progress on it. So with that brief setup, we will have 3 speakers on this: Lorelei Walker, Jeremy Ferguson, and I guess we've got 2 speakers. And Lorelei, are you ready to kick us off? And before maybe we do, County Executive Constantine, do you want to add, you've worked on this for a number of years, anything to that setup?
Yeah. No, I would be glad to. I think we all agree on what the problem is. And the problem is what you talked about, the 1% cap. It's also the fact that the Growth Management Act appropriately compelled us to get urban areas inside of cities. And we've done that. And the urban areas are the places where the highest value real property is, and the urban areas are the places where the businesses that pay taxes are. And so what the county is left with in unincorporated areas, the lower value properties and not a lot of businesses paying taxes, but still most of the roads and the bridges that we had to take care of. So the state tax regime, the way in which money is collected to pay for things, is completely out of alignment with the modern way we've been asked to govern ourselves. And that is something that Councilmember Lambert and Dunn and this whole council and I have been very cognizant of, and something that's very hard to get legislators' attention about, because it's kind of our problem. And so this is a regional road system. This is not the system used by the 250,000 people of the unincorporated area. This is a system used by millions of people across a 3-county area and more. And so we have to figure out a way to have the revenue system, the way we pay for this, get into alignment with the way we govern ourselves and the reality of a regional road system that runs through 40 jurisdictions here in King County and beyond the county borders. And I'm really looking forward to the discussion today about how we can team up to make that happen.
Very good, very helpful. Lorelei.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm excited to make sure that there's enough space and time for Jeremy to really do justice to speaking to this. But thank you to the King County Council and government leaders, as I understand and see that you have a strong and long track record with a deep understanding of this issue, attempting to tackle the problem of descending roads funding sources. So why do we bring our voice to the table today? That deterioration of unincorporated King County roads continues, it's escalating, and as I believe I hear, the division is fully in risk management. Now, John Taylor, the Director of Department of Local Services, please call me out if I got any of these statistics incorrect. But for some perspective, what I hear is that the total miles of roads maintained in unincorporated King County are more than those that are needed to drive from Bellingham to San Diego or from Seattle to the border of Minnesota. The function and safety of these roads are critical for almost every resident in King County, not just the constituents of Council members Lambert, Von Reitbauer, McDermott, and Vice Chair Dunn's districts. So a city resident who seeks medical attention or goes grocery shopping relies on waste removal or the multitude of other services. We need unincorporated roads to be maintained. We need workers to commute. We need products that travel across the county to their destination. So when you live and work in a concrete jungle, you probably want those mountains and trails on the east side that are your reprieve, but you need the roads to get there. So county residents need this network to be safe, functional, and sustained. But right now, sorry for the pun, but all signs point to closures. When you drive these roads or when you're treated by a nurse who commutes in from Snoqualmie because they can't afford to live in Seattle, reflect on the 35 bridges that are deteriorating to the point of expected closure, to the almost 70 miles of roadways that are identified for restriction or closure. And that's the distance from here to Olympia. So the maintenance of these 1,400 miles, their signs, their sidewalks, their trees, their maintenance, it's all handled by a few hundred union workers. So I challenge you to ask your colleagues, your teachers, your medical staff, your restaurant workers, your outdoor enthusiasts, how much do they use this infrastructure? So labor needs the financial mechanism to serve the county with these accessible roadways. Union members in the roads divisions are experts in their work. They're skilled in lean strategies. They can safely expedite roads projects, but only when they're fully funded. So right now, 44 bridges, give or take, require critical maintenance. 5 have general funding, with a single bridge with secured construction funding. So 1 out of 44 is fully funded for remediation. But the teams are ready. Of the 56 miles of roads requiring construction right now, about an hour's drive, only 1.4 miles is funded. That's like the distance my 5-year-old can ride on her new training wheeled bicycle. The teams are ready, though. So with funding, labor is the skilled workforce who will go into the community and repair the damage. But to date, the workforce has experienced 9 separate rounds of layoffs in a 6-year period following the recession. Now the budget forecast anticipates an additional 55% cut in funding. These are people with lives and loved ones who feed, house, and care for their communities, and they do so by focusing their work energy on safely serving King County residents. So in the last decade, staffing's seen a 35% cut, 221 human lives. This impacts more than 7 unions, more than 11 contracts. This impacts our people, and as one King County, we are all affected. So one consequence of underfunding is that areas in the county that have been historically under-resourced, in large part from institutional racism and redlining housing loans, they're not getting the safety resources they needed, or they need right now. Children in these communities deserve safe sidewalks, pathways so they can exercise and play, However, of the 21 miles needed for pedestrians, only 1/5 of a mile, as I understand, is funded. With less than 1% of dedicated funding, like, can you pour a patch of concrete? Can you stripe an intersection? I don't know. But look around your community when you go home. Do you have sidewalks? Are your kids using pedestrian walkways? Does your community need them? So the funding rub is that only 11%, give or take, of the population is paying for these 1,400 miles. And because of these funding structures that have been referenced, this 11% has historically been sought out to fund and supplement the benefits for almost all King County residents. So how can we get from risk management to asset management? We've heard some of these things that have depleted ROSE funding. The municipal annexations, where cities are internally localizing their ROSE fundings with limited financial support to the entire network. The fallout of the recession, the flat gas tax, the outcomes of voter initiatives, and how the passage of time just deteriorates infrastructure. And finally, that cap on the property tax revenue, it just bleeds dedicated funds into offsetting inflation. So this furthers the spiral. So what will your family be doing in 2025, 6 years from now? Will it need bridges, roads, sidewalks to live, commute, and survive? Because that's the projected date when the capital project dissolvement will fully eliminate these essential elements of our unincorporated system and further reduce roads funding division to critically minimal levels of support and staff. So as one King County, everyone's affected. So I would like to proudly invite our union member, Jeremy Ferguson, the maintenance section manager for Road Service Division in the Department of Local Services, the point person for Snowpocalypse first responders, to tell us his story of overlapping collective values of government, union mission, and how those, when supported through funding and commitment to the common good, can successfully serve our communities. Jeremy?
Thank you, Lorelei. Public sector employees, union employees, everything we do for community. That's what drives a public employee. That's what drives me now. That's what drove me when I was an elected official. I gave up that bad habit and went back to being a public employee. I was almost 7 years old in 1980 when Portland area's worst snowstorm hit the region. It still tops the top 10 list today. I remember sitting at the bottom of the stairs in my parents' home, looking out the window at the fir tree, wanting to go outside and play. And I just listened to the TV weatherman finishing up talking about how bad things were going to get. I didn't really care about what the weatherman said or what was really going on. All I wanted to do is understand why I had to go to work with my dad instead of staying home with the babysitter and playing outside with my friends. We lived in unincorporated Clackamas County in the Portland area, about 15 miles south of Portland, Oregon. Mom and Dad both worked for a small town police department. My mom was a dispatcher before the 911 system had come on board, and my dad was a sergeant. Mom was already at work. She had agreed to take yet another shift because the calls were supposed to increase as the weather got worse and people became stranded. Dad had been at work and came home to take a nap, send the babysitter home, pack up some essentials, and get back into work to help people. I watched Dad load up the truck, as I often did during inclement weather, extra clothes, food, water, sleeping bags, pillows, all the essentials. That all made sense. I'd been through this before in other inclement weather events and spent a lot of time at the police department. Typically, I'd crash underneath my mom's desk in some kind of makeshift fort tent under her desk and listen to the hum of typewriters and teletype machines and the cooling fans cooling the radios. But what caught me by surprise this time is my dad was packing up things like tow chains and a chainsaw and gas cans. My dad was a police officer, not a frontline worker, so of course I had to ask him, what the heck's going on, Dad? So he explained to me how bad he expected things to get that night, and that he was going to have to do more than just his regular job as a police officer. He was going to have to go out there and help lots of people who he hadn't met yet, and he also had to meet, sorry. This is a personal story too, by the way. I actually called as an aside, my dad is 80-something years old now, and I had to call to kind of check some of my own facts. And I thought that I'd stayed in the police department for a week. He told me it was only a night. So, so you have him to thank for fact-checking myself here. So Dad went in, we went in together. They both worked shift works, Mom and Dad. And I spent a lot of time hanging out with public employees, public works employees, firefighters, police officers. And besides my parents being public employees, most of my family were also public employees. They were school bus drivers, they worked in schools, they worked for other cities and county organizations. And sometimes it was confusing to me when we would go hang out at the late night coffee shop in between my parents' shift work. Were we hanging out with family members talking about work, or were we hanging out with coworkers talking about family? So that particular night, things ended up being a bit different than the other nights that I'd been at the police department. I didn't sleep under my mom's desk in a makeshift fort. The dispatch center was alive. It was hopping. All kinds of things were happening. People were calling in. I could often hear my dad's voice on the radio. He was out there helping public works folks clear trees from roads and making sure people were safe. And that night, the police department was colder than I'd ever seen before. Eventually, just like any 7-year-old, I got tired and I wanted to go to sleep. But it was so busy out in the dispatch center, there wasn't any quiet place to go. So the police chief offered his office, and my mom made a nice little nest out of the sleeping bag and some sweaters and coats, and I got to hang out in the police chief's office for about the next 36 hours. After that day and a half of seeing people come and go, and people come on to shift and leave shift, and hearing all of these different things happening out in the community, we finally got a chance to go home. And I remember going home and feeling lonely. Mom and Dad came home and passed out from sheer exhaustion. I didn't realize until much later that I'd actually learned quite a bit by sleeping on the police chief's office floor that night. As I grew older, my dad kept taking me back to the police department and around public employees, and I was pretty inquisitive. So I started asking questions of the people I was exposed to. Dad frankly got tired of answering all my why questions, so he'd take me to the police station and turn me loose or unleash me on his coworkers before take your kid to work was an actual day. One of my dad's best friends was a traffic signal technician, another one was a public works employee, and we would often go out to see job sites. And Dad would encourage me. He said, "Son, when you get older, I want you to be a public sector employee, but I don't want you to be a cop." He knew how dangerous that line of work was. He would often point at some person in a hard hat carrying a clipboard, and he would say, "That's the job you need to have because they're the ones that call the shots." Little did he know that 39 years later, I'd be going out on job sites in a hard hat and carrying a iPad or something. Those clipboards have gone by the wayside. But my favorite question to ask people is, why do you do your job? Everybody seemed to have a similar answer, and it stuck with me throughout my life. Sure, people could say that they made good money or talked about their career being aligned with their education or any number of things, but that's not the piece that stuck with me throughout my life. Now, I came along in my dad's life when he was in his 40s. He actually adopted me when he married my mom, and I was at such an early age that I don't remember anybody else being my father. But I can clearly remember doing one thing. We were in front of a judge who happened to be my dad's friend, because he knew everybody, it seemed like, and that judge asked me if I wanted to be the son of Frank Ferguson. Kids don't get to pick their parents, but I feel like I did. As I look back now, I realize that my dad had been on a few career paths to finally land on police work, and now I better understand why he knew everyone in the city. He had served in the Air Force, he was a school bus driver, he had worked in schools, He had been a volunteer firefighter and worked at the Public Works Department. But when his reserve officer number came up for full-time status, he dropped all the other things and became a police officer full-time. As a young kid, I couldn't understand how someone would be able to live such a long life and have done so many different careers throughout their lifetime. But now that I'm approaching the age that my father was in 1980, I get it. But back to what stuck with me. Every time I'd ask my dad, my mom, or any of the folks that they exposed me to, the answer that they give me about why they did what they did in the public sector was to help people or to help community. I never heard a public employee that they did their job to make money. That was a result of their job, but that was not the driving factor. So I was surrounded by people in the public sector, and naturally I decided to go into the public sector myself. In 1999, while I was working as a light rail operator for TriMet, I was an ATU member for 17 years, I was involved in a fatality accident. My dad, as well as my mentor at work, helped me get the help I needed to recover from such a tragic accident. It was an awful experience, but my dad and my mentor wanted to help. He wanted to help me, and that's when my life changed. Now, I was in the same shoes as many other rail operators, or bus operators for that matter, who had been in serious accidents. My dad likened my event to that of a police officer or other first responder who had been through a traumatic event. I'd been a public employee for about 5 years at this point, but now after this experience, I wanted to be that helper. I wanted to commit to doing things for individuals in the community which would enhance life, make it better, easier to navigate both literally and figuratively, because there's a lot of nuances and bureaucracy and red tape in government. All these years of growing up around people with strong social values, union workers who took pride in the work they do to make their community better, it all came full circle in that moment. I was a direct recipient of that help. I could speak to how it felt. I now had empathy and awareness, and I wanted to share that feeling with other people. I knew then that I wanted to commit my life to public service. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew how it felt to be helped, and now I wanted to give back. So I decided in that moment to be a leader. I understood what my dad meant when he said I needed to be the guy in the hard hat with the clipboard. My dad really had been thinking of me and what I should be doing with my life, but I hadn't truly appreciated it until I had my own life experiences. Within 2 years of that accident, I had made a move into a supervisory role and then later into management at TriMet, the Portland area's regional transit authority. Then 10 years after my fatality accident, I became mayor for a small city where I lived with my wife and kids, just 6 miles from the house that I was raised in unincorporated Clackamas County. My kids were able to see me and my city staff help people, and they were able to see projects completed in their own backyard. They were able to see things like transportation options introduced into the city, improved parks, updated roads, a refresh core downtown area, all things I was able to help with. When I came to King County in 2015, I felt like I'd found a new home, a new family, a family of people committed to doing more with less after getting past nearly 6 years of layoffs and 9 layoff processes. Roads employees were still committed to doing good things for their community even though things got really bad for a while. I recently came across the mission statement for the Afl-Cio, and it reads, "The mission of the Afl-Cio is to improve the lives of working families, to bring economic justice to the workplace and social justice to our nation. Union values, to improve lives, social justice." That sounds a bit like King County's true north, doesn't it? Making King County a welcoming community where every person can thrive. And there are several values associated or tied to that. These are values that so many of us agree with. When these values are widespread, our economy functions in a better way and more gets done for the greater good. In the day-to-day administration of my job, I get to see firsthand how dedicated union employees are and how much they care for the community. In the audience today, we have several roads employees. Actually, would you stand up for just a moment? Just stand up and then sit back down. So, these are truck drivers, they're sign installers, they're carpenters, they're people who work in the office, they're people who work out in the field, they're communicators, they're scientists, they're engineers. I know each of them, and I can likely tell you some kind of story about something they've done in their line of duty, which was bold, dangerous, or above and beyond the normal call of duty, all in the spirit of making things better for community. Being a public employee is a special calling. When you see these people in the audience, they are family members to me. They've gone through difficult life experiences together. They've saved roads from failing, repaired roads which have failed, and have made plans to keep our communities connected. They've done this while raising families at home and exposing their families to work they do every day. These public employees are doing more with less every year. It's widely understood that roads are underfunded, but these are the individuals out there working in, on, above, beside, or under these underfunded roads in unincorporated King County. They keep roads open and safe for our first responders, like my dad, who can do their job for the community. They help people. Not so long ago, in February of this year, King County experienced its own epic snowstorm, the worst winter storm the region has seen in 70 years. On Super Bowl Sunday, probably one of the biggest celebrations of the year in King County, I made the decision to call in staff to start fighting snow on 12-hour shifts. 90% of those employees whom one of my supervisors called responded within hours of the call on Super Bowl Sunday and reported for duty. The union contracts that we had negotiated gave me the ability to set a plan in motion and get employees in the field to fight the elements within 2 hours of the first call. The contracts provided a mechanism to keep people coming in and out of work 12-hour shifts. It's day in, day out, 19 days in a row, 12 hours on, 12 hours off. And we eventually ran out of road staff to provide that service. But we had union contract language that gave me options to call in help from other divisions as well as local union halls. Roads equipment is typically used about 8 hours in a day, Monday through Friday. But for these 19 days, almost all of our equipment was in use 24 hours a day and really working hard. Fleet mechanics, union ASE certified fleet mechanics work diligently around the clock to keep weather-beaten equipment in service, providing safe pathways for emergency responders and others in the community. Our roads frontline employees would not have been able to keep up on it with the snowstorm had it not been for the support of all of the support personnel that we have employed at roads. Administrative staff, most of which are union members themselves, supported trades and crafts by taking constituent calls, procuring materials, coordinating activities, and many, many other things to keep things rolling. Department of Local Services communication staff have hundreds of communications giving our county employees kudos for the work they performed. Our staff did amazing things. They cut down trees which were blocking roadways and driveways. They dug out paths to get paramedics into neighborhoods. They escorted PSE crews in to restore power into struggling communities. In fact, our Vashon crew took a short break from plowing roads and went down to assist the PSE crews in getting power restored to the entire island. I am proud to have a staff of pre-first responders. All maintenance section employees are considered essential in an emergency. We make sure that access roads and service roads are clear to emergency communication towers. We plan and coordinate with the Office of Emergency Management. We have relationships with transit, with fire districts, with sheriff's office, with other police districts. And we do everything that we can to maintain lifeline routes and keep them open during snow, ice, flooding, landslides, and even earthquakes. My employees don't wear a badge. They wear orange, and they're expected to keep clear, properly maintained roads ready to go when emergency responders need to get somewhere. So as I was sleeping on my own couch in the rent and maintenance facility this year during King County's worst winter storm of the century, I thought back to that night 39 some odd years ago when I camped out in the police chief's office. Mom and Dad's coworker family always treated me like I was some kind of amazing kid for spending so much time at the police station. But then I started reflecting on that, and it dawned on me that these coworkers didn't think that I was an amazing kid. They thought Mom and Dad were amazing, dedicated public servants who wanted to help people. And I realized that I'd become my father, the father I chose to call my dad. I can lead the people who do the work. Road Services is already building a team of people who can deliver projects, do great things in the field, and be responsive to constituent requests. But I need everyone in this room to commit to working with labor, with department and division leadership, and with many others to support funding that will allow us to continue and expand the good work we do for the community. Public sector employees, union employees, everything we do for our community. Thank you.
Awesome. Wow. Jeremy, thank you very much for your leadership there, and Councilmember Lambert, who just really raved about the service that you and your team provided, particularly out in her district during that time. Executive Constantine, you convened a Roads and Bridges Task Force a couple of years ago that came out with a report and set of recommendations. Is that a foundation from which we can launch the next step to back up the folks that Jeremy just talked about, to give them the tools they need to actually accomplish the mission we're asking them to do?
I think it is. Councilmember Lambert participated, and the general finding is exactly what I talked about earlier, that there's this misalignment between the way we fund things and the way they function. And what we have to do is, as a community, and that means not just the governments, but particularly labor and our partners in the business community and everyone who has an interest, focus our legislators and other statewide officials' attention on changing this misalignment so that that transportation is paid for just in the way it is used regionally across a metropolitan region, really, of 3 counties. And so I would have us get out that material, dust it off, look at the data we collected, and some of the ideas that were offered up, and then move forward.
Councilmember Lambert, who for years has been sounding the siren of danger on this, you wanted to say a few words.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate that you heard the siren. First of all, I want to thank the road. Yeah, thank you. That's true. First of all, I want to thank the roads crew. You did amazing, amazing work, and not everybody knows all the intricacies of what you did in your plan and your replanning, in the density of the snow and what you had to do, and the amount of the plows breaking down. You were amazing. So I just want to tell you, I think you are all angels, and I really appreciate the fact that you are so dedicated. And I want to thank Dow for putting the Department of Local Services together. For many years, I felt like the entire department was being run partially out of my office. And when Sung came one day and told me that, I thought that was funny. And so I'm thankful that you put it together. And I'm also thankful for the director that we have running it and the team around him. I don't know if you know, is it okay if I announce that one of our roads directors, is that okay? Our roads direct, it's what? Okay. Our roads director just won the award as the best road director in the state of Washington by the County Roads Administration Board. Coincidentally, yeah. I sit on that board, and I've spoken so highly of him and his team. And so I was very excited when he won the award. I also told them that that means they can't take him away from us. So we have talked a lot of things today, and I think Laura Lee Walker, your talk was really spot on. There are 2 things that I wanted to say. We have not even begun to touch how serious our bridge problem is also. We have 181 bridges. And when I talked to the federal bridge guy and I told him I had 181 bridges, he told me he wanted me to be his new BFF. And I told him that with 35 bridges that will potentially be closed by 2040, that is going to be traumatic, and we cannot allow that to happen. The legislators heard it, but it's gone in one ear and out the other. And I think the time for them to hear that we're serious, and it's not just this person or that person, it's all of us. This is serious. Zero money in 6 years is not acceptable. Get on and do your job, the better it's going to be. So thank you very much for all you do, and I'm really glad that I'm not alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lambert. For the first time ever in our council reorganization, we created a committee on local services, rural roads, and bridges. And that committee is chaired, if I got the name right, Councilmember Lambert, that committee is chaired by Councilmember Lambert. And with respect to kind of next steps on this topic, I would welcome any other comments, but I would suggest that that committee seems to be the appropriate venue and has the right leadership in terms of the person who has been the loudest voice on this to take that Rural Roads and Bridges Task Force report, convene the appropriate stakeholders, and help us advance that work with the support of the council and the executive, partners in labor, and allies at the state level. So that would be, I guess, by way of concluding remarks on this, unless Lorelei, you've got some additional comments you want to add.
Yeah, so I just want to let you all know that I want to assure you that you have labor's overt support in bringing our power, voice, and demonstration to this endeavor. We're hoping for a multi-pronged solution for both short-term gap funding and advocacy for a long-term bill to be passed in Olympia. But regardless of the strategy you choose and the mechanism that you want to do this in, know that you have our commitment and partnership today. And so we just want to make sure you know that we're here to elevate and reinforce your short and long-term strategies. Thank you.
All right, very good meeting, I think. Mr. Executive, do you want to say anything by way of concluding remarks?
Great meeting. Now we're ready to get out there and get the work done.
That's right. I appreciate the hospitality that you've shown the council. We took a year off last year from the annual labor summit while we were working on the master labor agreement. It's great to be back. I'm excited about the action items we took today. We've got some big work ahead of us. We pledge our allyship and partnership with you, and we appreciate your allyship and partnership. Please know that we are always available to talk, to meet, to work on challenges together. We appreciate it very much. The council will be in recess until, what time? 1:30 this afternoon, when we'll reconvene and take up the rest of our agenda. Thank you all very much for joining us.